Darius Acuff is probably going 5th in the draft, which sounds normal until you realize that there may not be another freshman guard season in the last 7 years that actually matches what he just did. Not Kyrie, not Chris Paul, not Derrick Rose, not even close statistically in some categories, and somehow the conversation around him still feels cautious. Like the market saw the numbers, watched the film, checked the measurements, and still decided to lower the volume a little before speaking about him. That usually means one of two things. Either the production's fake or the archetype scares people. And boy, does this archetype scare people. Because Darius Acuff is a 6'2" guard from Detroit with questionable defensive habit, an obsession with difficult shots, a usage rate that looks borderline irresponsible, and the kind of confidence that makes the man play like clockwork. Like he already assumes the possession belongs to him before anybody else on the floor notices. But before we start, if you love basketball and you're one of the 90% who watch without subscribing, it's time to join the NBA Inside family. Now let's get back into it. Darius Acuff scored 49 points in a double overtime SEC game 3 days after being spotted in a walking boot. Not a sick day, no, a walking boot. 15 minutes played. 16 for 27 from the field, 6 threes. Arkansas still lost by 2, which honestly made the whole thing feel worse somehow. It was like watching a player grit his teeth, push on forward, and refuse the reality everybody else was experiencing.
Same thing, I believe. Acuff rises, ties the game!
And the strange part is, this was not hidden. Nobody discovered Darius Acuff late. He came through Cass Tech in Detroit, one of the biggest athletic pipelines in the city, led them to a state title, won Mr. PSL as a sophomore, the first sophomore ever to do it, then transferred to IMG Academy, which, at this point, is like growing up in a company town for high-level basketball. You go there when the industry already knows you're worth it. Then on the Nike EYBL circuit, he averaged over 21 points a game against elite competition. Outscored Cooper Flagg, outscored Jeremiah Fears, outscored Derek Queen, all during the same stretch. The production never disappeared when the talent level increased. Then he goes to Arkansas for John Calipari, which matters because Calipari has spent the last quarter century operating like a guard manufacturing plant. 41 first-round picks since the start of the 21st century. Multiple MVPs, multiple All-Stars. Devin Booker went 13th. Tyrese Maxey went 21st. Every few years, there's another guy people talk themselves out of because the role looked too small before the talent became impossible to hide. And Calipari said something early that stuck with me. He said, "You're looking at a kid that can go in that league and have the ball in his hands and make good decisions and make shots." That sounds simple until you think about who Calipari usually trusts with those kinds of statements. Because coaches like him almost never talk publicly about freshman guards that way, unless they already see professional offensive control. Not highlights, not scoring bursts, but absolute control. Still, Acuff stayed behind certain names in the rankings. AJ DeBanza, Cameron Boozer, Darren Peterson, Nate Ahmed. Bigger wings, cleaner defensive projections, safer body types. Basketball people always talk about 6'2" scoring guards the same way people talk about old sports cars. Everybody loves the look of them until it's time to actually buy one.
Good player. He is going to help this team out a ton.
Acuff Jr. will punch one through.
That's the important thing here. Acuff was never ignored. He was processed correctly by the system, evaluated correctly, promoted correctly, ranked correctly according to modern draft logic. And then the actual basketball started making the logic uncomfortable for everybody, because the signals around him started getting weird. He wins the Allen Iverson Award, given to the best high school guard in the country, which already carries a strange amount of symbolism because Allen Iverson spent half his career forcing people to admit 6-foot guards could warp entire defenses if the offensive pressure became severe enough. Acuff wins the award while hearing the exact same criticisms. Too small, defensive target, risky offensive profile. At this point, you can smell the irony. Then, during his freshman season, he signed a signature shoe deal with Reebok before even entering the draft. First player to do that with a major brand since John Wall. another Calipari guard, another #1 pick level prospect. And now Allen Iverson himself is helping run Reebok basketball operations and publicly calling Acuff the next him. Now look, that sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud. And it should sound ridiculous. But at a certain point, the market starts leaving fingerprints everywhere. Brands do not hand signature shoes to college freshmen because they think the player might become decent someday. That's future projection. That's corporations trying to buy early access to gravity before everybody else admits it exists. Then the measurements came out. 6'2", but longer than expected. Bigger reach, bigger wingspan than people assumed from the film. And suddenly the conversation changes a little. Not fully, but just enough to notice. Then the player comparisons start leaking out. Stephon Marbury handle, Allen Iverson pull-up game, Dwayne Wade ability to play bigger than his listed size, which is insane company. 3 Hall of Famers, and honestly, comparisons like that usually tell me less about the player than they do about how uncomfortable evaluators are starting to become. Once scouts start stacking historical references together like spare parts, it usually means the archetype stopped fitting into neat categories a while ago. And then February 18th happened. Tuscaloosa. Ranked Alabama team. Arkansas down to basically a 7-man rotation. Double overtime. Acuff playing 50 minutes after Calipari had reportedly been asked days earlier if the walking boot meant he'd miss the game.
And that was Brazil who picked up the missed shot. And another opportunity, and that's 3 more for Acuff.
Are you nuts? That was the response. 49 points later, the answer looked obvious. Not because of the scoring total itself. College basketball has random explosions sometimes. Guys catch fire, and weird games happen. That's just how it is. But this didn't feel random. It felt like offensive load-bearing. Every possession bending toward the same player because eventually everybody on the floor understood that was the only remaining option. Alabama knew where the ball was going. Arkansas knew where the ball was going. And it didn't matter. Arkansas still lost. Which weirdly made the mythology around the game stronger, because now the performance exists almost separately from the result. Like the basketball gods themselves looked at the game and decided the point was not to reward Arkansas. Not at all. But to staple the people in that arena down to their seats and watch the shot making for 50 straight minutes. Then Nashville happens. 3 games in 3 days. The kind of stretch where freshman guards usually start looking tired by the second half of game 2. Legs go first. Then the jumper follows. Then the decision-making starts drifting. Acuff looked sharper as the tournament kept going.
4 of 5, the only loss in that span to the Florida Gators. Here's Acuff for 3. Yes!
37 against Oklahoma. 5 boards, 5 assists, 3 steals. Arkansas trailing late with the shot clock bleeding out, and defenders closing in from both sides. Acuff dribbles into a contested pull-up with 5 seconds left and buries it anyway. Whole possession looked doomed halfway through, and he still controlled the ending of it. Then Mississippi. 24 in regulation. Overtime game again. Arkansas needed somebody willing to keep attacking after everybody else on the floor started pacing themselves for survival. Acuff kept hunting shots like the game had just tipped off. Then Vanderbilt in the championship. 30 points, 11 assists. Arkansas wins the SEC tournament for the first time in 26 years. 91 points across the tournament, 23 assists. 50% from 3 on 24 attempts. And after a while, the repetition starts changing the feeling around the player. 1 big game feels exciting. 2 feels real. 3 straight days of the exact same offensive pressure starts feeling structural. Like defenses are entering the game already understanding the problem and still failing to move it.
Acuff going to work on Reed. All the way in and got it! And the freshman...
That's where the advanced numbers start mattering. 20 points per game, 5 assists, 40% from 3, 3-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio. College basketball has had thousands of guards come through it. High-usage scorers usually leak efficiency somewhere. The passing drops, or the turnovers climb, or the jumper cools off once the volume increases. There's usually one loose floorboard somewhere in the house. Acuff's season kept removing them. 5 separate 20-point, 10-assist games as a freshman, second most in NCAA history behind Trae Young. First SEC player since Pistol Pete Maravich to lead the conference in both scoring and assists, almost 60 years ago. And then you circle back to the original claim, the one that sounds fake the first time you hear it. Over 800 points, 60% true shooting, freshman guard, not Kyrie, not CP3, not Derrick Rose, which starts creating a strange draft conversation around them. Because teams are no longer trying to figure out whether the talent exists. The talent already forced itself into the room months ago. Now the conversation becomes tolerance. How much defensive risk are you willing to absorb for this level of offensive pressure? How much size concern can coexist with this much creation?
Malik Thomas there.
Acuff Jr. attacks, and the foul.
And some of that criticism's fair. He ball watches sometimes, takes shortcuts, coasts through possessions when the offensive burden gets too heavy. Pick and rolls can drag him into bad angles, and there are clips where stronger guards move him around physically. NBA offenses are gonna isolate that immediately. But the reason evaluators keep struggling to land on a clean conclusion is because the offensive profile keeps dragging the conversation back toward them. Every weakness exists in the same file as historic production. Every concern sits beside evidence that almost nobody at his age has replicated. That changes how teams interpret flaws, because flaws look different on players carrying ordinary responsibility. Acuff spent entire stretches functioning like Arkansas's full offensive ecosystem, initiating possessions, creating advantages, taking bailout shots late in the clock, handling volume scoring and playmaking at the same time. That workload changes the shape of a player's film. You start seeing fatigue decisions, energy conservation, possessions where the brain gets to the spot before the body fully follows. And franchises have to decide whether they're evaluating permanent limitations or temporary survival habits. That's the actual draft question here, not whether Darius Acuff can play in the NBA. He's already shown too much creation against too much competition for that discussion to hold together anymore. The question's whether teams picking above him believe offensive engines still matter enough to tolerate the discomfort that comes with them. Because smaller guards make organizations nervous now. Defensive versatility became the league's preferred language over the last decade. Wingspan charts and switchability grids started carrying more authority than improvisation and shot difficulty. Acuff enters the draft at the exact moment that philosophy may be overcorrecting. Because every postseason eventually turns ugly. Actions break down, spacing collapses, defenses know the playbook already. And suddenly, the most valuable player on the floor becomes the guy who can manufacture offense after structure dies. That's the environment Acuff already plays in naturally, which is why the walking boot game keeps hanging over the evaluation. 49 points in 15 minutes. Well, while Arkansas barely had enough bodies to survive double overtime, that game condensed the entire player into one night. The risk, the shot making, the workload, the volatility, the control. And when a prospect keeps forcing the conversation back towards singular performances like that, eventually every discussion around them circles back to the same thing. How many warning labels are franchises willing to place on production this rare? Somebody's gonna take him around 5th. And if Darius Acuff works at the NBA level, the mistake won't be that teams failed to see the evidence. That's willful ignorance, because the evidence has been screaming for months. The mistake will be deciding that the discomfort created by his archetype mattered more than the production sitting directly in front of him.